Phil, tell us how you began to work with Buzzy Linhart.
We began to work with Buzzy through Lou Reisner, our record producer, who was also producing Buzzy at that time. And Lou used us as studio musicians on several jobs with Quincy Jones and Gilbert O'Gill, and got Richie working with Harvey Mandel, and with Aphrodite's Child, Vangelis and Demis Roussos, and the people that Lou was producing himself. Whenever he could and whenever it was possible, he used us in some role or another as studio musicians, and Buzzy was one of the acts he was producing, and we were fortunate enough to get the gig playing on his record.
Who were the members of the Eyes of Blue when you recorded with Buzzy?
The members of the Eyes of Blue when we recorded with Buzzy was Taff Williams on guitar, Richie Francis on bass, John Weathers on drums, and myself on keyboards. They had Jim Sullivan in, Big Jim Sullivan, the session guitarist, to play sitar and some other bits and bobs on one of the tracks. And I do believe they got a tabla player in, but I can't remember the name. I certainly wasn't there for that particular session when they did that track with Jim Sullivan and the tabla player. I think Taff went in, and we went in and did some overdubs on that track.
On Buzzy's album, you play a lot of Mellotron. Did you like the Mellotron?
Mellotron. I can't stand Mellotrons, but at the time Lou Reisner had acquired a Mellotron. It was one of the first in the country, so I sort of, what should we say, adopted it and got our road managers to take it down in Wales. I had it in my father's garage for about 12 months. Graham used it as well. Graham Bond used Lou's Mellotron. It was because Graham used it, really. I was, being a sort of, Graham being one of my big influences. I loved Graham. And of course, Graham was being produced. Can you say if anybody could produce Graham? If anybody could produce Buzzy, come to that. Anyway, Lou was trying to produce Graham, and Graham has always been one of the biggest influences on my playing. So when Graham used the Mellotron, I give it a shot myself, I must admit I'm not particularly wild with the sound of it. I quite like the way the Beatles used it and George Martin, but maybe that's just a kind of nostalgic, romantic thing, But I didn't mind doing it at the time, I didn't have, I wasn't throwing up or anything when I was playing the Mellotron parts. But in retrospect, it is a dreadful, scratchy, scrapey, shitty sound, I can't understand why people like it at all, I really don't understand it.
How would you describe Buzzy to someone?
Well, Buzzy, to describe Buzzy, you can only say he's a one-off, total original. Quite an intense bloke, but in a very entertaining and human way.
How would you describe his music?
It's difficult to describe Buzzy's music because it's got a lot of original elements in it, and he blends a lot of things from a lot of different styles together in a very homogeneous way. He makes it his own. I suppose I don't know how to describe it. I don't like pigeonholing things, but it's like a kind of folk blues approach with a slight element of rock and roll in it. But it's indescribable, really. It's Buzzy.
What was it like working with Buzzy in the studio? Did you come prepared, or did you write the songs?
It was
together?
working with Buzzy and the amount of preparation he made on his songs was he didn't have anything written out as far as notes were concerned. He'd play the song through, and then we'd work out what the chords were and what the sequence of events, the structure of the song, and then we'd come up with some ideas and play some accompanying role. I can't even remember if he had the lyrics written out. I think he just did the whole thing spontaneously. And
was he open to your input?
Buzzy was very open to anybody that would take an interest in what he was trying to do, and very open attitude towards things. He knew what he wanted. There's no doubt about that. He had specific ideas about his compositions and about how the material should be sounding, how it should come out. But he was very open to other people, in this particular instance, to our musical input. So that was he was good to work with. There were no big ego problems at all with Buzzy.
How did he get on with the other members of the band? Taft and John? Richie?
We got on like house on fire, we got on really well because there was no front with Buzzy, so you could more or less form an instant relationship with him. He was that type of person, very little prejudice in that sense. And
did the Eyes of Blue like working with him?
The Eyes of Blue loved working with him. Richie had threw a bit of a wobbler at one point where somebody in the press wrote that the Eyes of Blue had now become Buzzy Linhart's backing band, to which Richie retorted, "We are nobody's backing group and we never will be." Mainly, I presume, because he thought that spending the amount of time working with Buzzy could have been better spent developing his own considerable talent. I was quite happy to do it because it was a good gig with a creative and interesting person, and I learned a lot. I was in a process of learning myself at that point. So working with all the different people that Lou Reisner put us in contact with was an educational process, and Buzzy was certainly an education, believe me. But he also is he's a very generous person. He gave Taft Williams the double cutaway Gibson that he used for many years. Taft was over the moon about that. He was very happy and put it to as we know, Taft used it to very great and beautiful effect with his playing for many, many years. So, Buzzy was a generous person, and if he felt there was a genuine musical response from people, he was only too glad to help take it further. Especially, I don't know, but I think he got on quite well. He came down went down to Swansea for rehearsals, and he seemed to have a good time down there. I think he was like most Americans at that particular point in time. They came over to Britain and were surprised by London, and then when they went down into a more provincial situation like Wales, were even more surprised again. We got him billeted with Wyndham's mother-in-law, who was a very straight-laced, old-fashioned sort of person, and when he got his girlfriend Jeannie, I think her name was, if I remember correctly, over, and they started bathing together with the bathroom door open, then it was too much for Wyndham's mother-in-law. She kicked them out of the house. There's nothing particularly outrageous about that, I know, but and I think Buzzy and Jeannie were very Well, why? You know, we're just taking a bath together. What's the problem? So anyway, they ended up. I think they moved in with Martin in Hanover Street, drove everybody crazy there for a week, and then moved further out to town down to the Mumbles Road into a hotel. Just before they moved even further out of town onto the beach, we all went back up to London and made the record. So, but he took Swansea by storm and had a big influence on a lot of the musicians he met there. He certainly went out and mingled with the natives and made a big impression.
Buzzy apparently had a long drug addiction. Was it evident at that time, or was he apparently clean then?
Buzzy was clean at that time, I'm sure, and I was very surprised to hear about his heroin addiction because he certainly took care of his health at that time, particularly his lungs, and was fanatical about cigarette smoking. He didn't smoke cigarette, he hated smoke of any kind. When we drove down to Wales in our transit van, he insisted on having the windows open at 3 o'clock in the morning, and it was incredibly cold. And when he met, or was in the company of other people that were smoking cigarettes, he had no problems whatsoever in saying to them in his own inimitable way, and I listen to him, his inimitable, this is a very bad impression of Buzzy, but he'd say, would you mind putting that cigarette out, please? I have to take care of my voice, you know. Of course, people at that particular time were extremely shocked by this kind of very sort of, you know, straight and direct approach, you know. I mean, it's nothing these days, you know, with the attitude to smoking. He did take it to extremes. I think somebody told me that he ended up taking an oxygen cylinder and a mask on stage. I heard that. I don't know whether there's any truth in it. And he did. There is truth in the fact that he came to Eliza Blue gig in Blazes in London at that particular point. And we looked out in the audience to try and, you know, we knew Buzzy was coming, so we thought, well, we looked out but we couldn't see him. He eventually showed up at the back of the room with his mouth tightly closed and his cheeks puffed out. He'd stand there for a few minutes until he'd go red in the face. Then he'd go out of the room, breathe the air out, take a fresh lung full of air, come back into the room and stand there again for another minute or so. And it was really irritating in the end, you know. He did this for the whole 45-minute set. It's extremely funny, but it was very, very irritating, you know. And that's typical of Buzzy. He would make a point in a very forceful but always humorous way. I mean, Buzzy really didn't know when to stop, you know. When he was enjoying something and was on it, having a good time, he didn't want to stop, you know, which was one of the lovable things about him, in fact.
When was the last time you spoke to Buzzy?
The last time I spoke to Buzzy was after when we finished making the record, which was when? 68, 69. I presume he went back to the States and we went back down to Wales.
You have a message for Buzzy?
I sure do. Buzzy, me, 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 me. Ha ha.